If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we're back after a long time away. Some of you guys have been around for a while, know who I am. My name is John Wheaton. I used to host a couple of nights a week here on Survival Dispatch. I had to step away because my schedule was a little bit busy, but I'm back here filling in for Chris tonight, and it is awesome to be back with you guys. It's been several months since I've seen you guys. You guys probably have seen me with the new Threat Wire stuff, which kind of fits my schedule a little bit better. And but it is good to be back, and hope you guys enjoy what we have tonight. And with me, I have our common friend and CIA extraordinaire spy, Mr. Jeffrey MD. How are you today, brother?
I am doing good. No complaints.
Good. Well, let's get right into our stuff. Hold on. I just in true fashion, I would have downsized something that I needed here. There we go. Give me just a second, folks. I'm a little rusty, and in all of my show prep, didn't have this up where it needed to be. So real quick, we'll get into the conflicted question, and then we are going to get into our main topic, which is the two fronts that we're seeing. And we're going to talk about one specifically tonight that we are seeing in where Islam is kind of growing underneath our noses, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to it. We're doing a lot on the terrorist threat, but there's another side of this that I think needs to be covered as well. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, Jeff, did you want to read the conflicted question, or I can? It doesn't matter.
You better, because I don't have it.
Okay. Well, and this one's kind of related to this. So as news breaks of coordinated bombings at churches across America by homegrown extremists aiming to impose their will on our communities, we get word that armed groups are moving in from urban enclaves to convert and clear out locals, giving you just 1 day's notice to evacuate. How do you choose your bug out route, and what supplies do you cache along the way to avoid capture? Guys, think about that and what your answer would be, and we'll get you guys' answers in the chat at the end of the episode. All right, moving on. Just a quick reminder before we get into our main topic. You can become a guardian. If you're not already a guardian, it's a huge, huge value for you guys. You get a lot more behind the paywall than you get in front of it. And you'll get 5 private intel channels, which we have a couple that just spun up, and they are full of people filling in each other on what's going on around the country. And we're starting to actually look at doing some localized intel as well, which is very cool. So that each area of the United States has some information. Your SHTF emergency alerts, those go out to all of our Guardian level. We have our 37 survival EMAGs. That's a $370 value that you're getting direct access to it. You get direct access to the team, including myself, Jeff, Chris, and all of the others that are on Survival Dispatch in whatever way. And it's only $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, which saves you about 2.5 months annually. Guardian's eyes across the nation, and short circuits the media BS. So you'll get all of those things for signing up for a Guardian membership. You just have to go over to survivaldispatch.news and you can do it there. All right. Getting into our main topic, we're going to actually play some videos and react to them. So one of the things that has been very much in a lot of our minds is what we're seeing with the growth of the Islamic communities in the country. And while I'm not blanket stating that every Muslim that is in the United States is a threat, that's not what we're saying at all. But we do want to also be aware that with a lot of this ideology comes some radicals. And with that, we have to be aware of those things and where they're growing. So we're going to start with a give me just 1 second here. Make sure I've got these in order here. Like I said, I'm a little rusty, guys, so give me a little grace tonight for sure. So let me find the right one here. Well, how come that one's not showing up? Oh, here it is. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is by End Wokeness, and this is a graphic. Let me blow this up for you guys. This is a graphic showing what he says here is 48 mosques have been built in this one area in Texas, in the DFW area, in the last 24 months. So that's about 2 per month, which shows a massive influx of the Islamic area or the Islamic people. So we've seen this, and it's kind of a shocking thing, because if you saw that, if you went back a couple of years in UK and you saw that and see where it's at now, that's kind of scary. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this and what this kind of signifies? I think you're muted.
It's obviously a little concerning, but
yes.
I also look at it as you got to look, what are they, radical mosques, or are they
exactly
not radical mosques?
Yeah, I mean, and there is a differentiation. Yeah,
absolutely. For sure. There are plenty of Muslims out there who just, they want to raise their families, they want to, do good by themselves and their community, et cetera, et cetera. It's the kind of the crazy radical ones that you got to worry about. The fact that they're growing this big in Dallas is not that big of a surprise. Dallas is a huge area. It's a growing area, and it's growing a lot in high tech. And there's a lot of, you hear about a lot about the H-1B visa thing, and they're bringing in people, but there's a lot of industries that tend to attract Muslims more than others. And a lot of those are relocating to the Dallas area. Because completely surprising.
Right. And you think of, climate of where a lot of these people are coming from. If they're immigrating, then they're coming from warmer climates. They're going to want to look for warmer climates. That's kind of why Dearborn, Michigan is kind of a surprise that's kind of an enclave, because that's actually a very cold climate. A good chunk of year.
They've been there for a long time. It was slow to get to where it is today. But I think they came in to work in the auto industry back in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. And then it went from there.
Yeah. So, and this next one it's a 3-minute clip. We're not going to play the whole thing of the Real America Voice, which is Steve Bannon's, and he had Peter McIlvena talking about specifically this with the stuff in Dallas. We'll watch a little bit of this and then we'll react to it. And then we're going to move into some other things that we're going to give you guys some background on why this is actually concerning, because if there is a decent percentage of this that has more of the radical ideology, that's very concerning, because that is the ideology of conquer, anybody that doesn't believe in what you believe, and enslave them and do all kinds of stuff. We'll get into all of that. So watch this real quick, and then we're going to react to it.
by the end of the decade, we'll have more mosques than any other state in the US. At the moment, California, I think, has got around 400 mosques. Texas is around 350. But Texas added 50 mosques over the last 24 months, and that is rapidly increasing. In Irving,
hang on, slow down. They've added how many mosques in the last 24 months? How many?
48 mosques in the last 24 months, and that is rapidly increasing.
Hang on, they're opening multiple mosques per month in the state of Texas.
Yes, and this is not Epic City issue, which is one area that everyone is focusing on, thank God. This is across, and this is primarily in the Dallas, Houston area, and of course down in Austin. This is in the urban areas. I think there the huge amount of, I need to look at my figures, but there are around 200 mosques, 215 mosques, I think, that are now in the Dallas, Houston area, and around 100 plus mosques in Austin. And where I was in Irving, which is kind of between Fort Worth and Dallas, just by the airport, by DFW, there are 2 Sharia courts operating. And I know that your viewers and listeners, Steve, will think, because of the rhetoric coming out from the Republican Party, that actually there's a stop on any Sharia courts. That is not happening. There's a stop on Epic City. This is not happening in Texas. But yet,
so that last point I wanted to get to, that's the other key thing, is that there are 2 Sharia courts. Now, this is the stuff that probably is more concerning, is because this represents a parallel justice systems to the American justice system.
Well,
and go ahead.
It does and it doesn't. It's most of the Sharia courts, I mean, there are a couple here and there, are to handle, most of them are to handle business disputes between Muslims. You know, a Muslim guy loans money to another Muslim guy, and the guy doesn't pay him back in time, or he does a deal where he's going to buy some of his product and the guy doesn't deliver it or something like that. And they both agree as part of the contract to have any disputes.
Oh, I think, are you there, Jeff? I don't know. Can you guys give me, am I frozen or is it just Jeff? Can you let me know, or am I frozen too, or can you guys still hear me? Waiting on an answer. I don't know if I think I lost Jeff for a second. Can you guys hear me? Am I still up there? Okay. All right, cool. Well, we'll continue on. Hopefully Jeff can get back in. I don't know what happened. But we'll move on. Yeah, and this is one key thing, and it's not necessarily that we're saying that this is absolutely, a setup, but there are those in this community. Add him here. There you are, back. You midpoint, you froze. So
yeah, my internet took a dump. I don't know how far you guys got on that, but I think if it's used to mediate contracts and both parties have agreed to it and it's in the contract, it's not illegal. But if it's criminal stuff, no, they can't do it.
Yeah, and it's more of like, is this a prerequisite to that? But this is just stuff that we have to we need to be aware of as Americans, because we are governed by the Constitution on the legal side. Now, as you said, if 2 people agree to basically mediate a contract in a Sharia court, that's a different situation. That's not.
Yeah. Now they can't impose that on you. If you do a deal with a Muslim guy and there's a dispute and he goes, well, I'm going to go to a Sharia court. You can go, pound sand, dude. I'm suing you in U.S. court.
Let me know how that works out for you. So
yeah.
here's the next one, kind of just rounding out the mosque stuff, and then we're going to get into some of what we see on the radical side of this. And this is one that I saw kind of pop up. Open source intel put this out. So some American cities are seeing a growing trend of churches being purchased in local Muslim communities and converted to mosques. In 2020, the American Mosque Survey counts 2,769 mosques in the country, a jump of 30% in the last 10 years. So we were seeing that start to ramp up. And here's one caveat to this. When you actually look at birth rates, white Americans aren't having babies at the same rate that Muslims are. Muslims are very much about having lots of kids. So I think the last figures were like the average. So it's there's different ones. So if you're talking about liberal Americans, people that qualify themselves as liberal, I think it's like 1.2 children. Christians and more conservative people, they're still actually having children at replacement rates.
2.1, 2.2.
2.1, 2.2, something like that. But when you look at that compared to Muslims, I think they're having like 3.8 children per couple. So they're almost doubling everyone else. So this is one of those things that, I don't want to be the one that tells everybody to do it, but we need to be having babies, guys. If you're white Christian Americans, you need to be having babies.
Take Pete Hegseth's example and have like 6.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's important that we keep our livelihood, our legacies alive, and that's not casting shade at the Muslim community. But I will also say this: one of the ways that they take over countries, if there's a radical element to it, is they get in, they outbreed the indigenous population and slowly take over. We're seeing that in UK and several other European countries now. So this is something to think about.
And the Chinese did it for years. They'd get invaded, somebody would beat them, and then 2 generations later, everybody's Chinese because they marry a Chinese woman and have a kid who's half Chinese, and they have kids that are 2/3 Chinese, and their next generation of kids are 7/8. Before you know it, they're Chinese. Yep,
absolutely. So it's something to keep in mind. Let's watch this video. So this is this one's kind of disturbing because they're kind of gloating over the fact that this is a church and they're turning it into a mosque. So it's kind of one of those very much a gloating thing.
So this is what we're doing. So we're praying at churches now. That's what we're doing, Sheikh. Wow. Astaghfirullah. Look at the brothers lining up at the church. Assalamu brothers. So where are we, man? We at the church? Y'all praying at the church? Y'all praying at the church? What are we doing here, man? Why have we gathered here? Okay, mashallah, we're going to convert the church into a masjid. Okay, man, y'all was scaring me for a minute. Get the khutbah, habibi, get the khutbah. Yalla, inna alhamdulillah. Mashallah. Hey, beginning stages.
So very much kind of in the more gloating type attitude there. And they're actually seeing this as a very big trend across where these mosques are buying churches. Now, I mean, a church would actually make the most sense as far as the building layout for sure. So, everything can have 2 meanings, but we want to be aware of these kind of things. So next, so now we're going to get into some stuff that's very much more disturbing as far as this goes. This is Muslim imams and leaders in the United States talking about how America loses. So let's watch this real quick. And I think this is a montage, but let's watch.
Spoken a lot about dismantling the American empire, dismantling this imperium. Are we ever going to see the end of this empire? Like, would we see the end of this empire in our lifetime? Like, how realistic is it to dismantle this imperium?
All empires fall. Fall of the empire is inevitable. Inevitable.
On earth is this empire going to be overtaken? How is a country like America, which spends 13 times more than the next 10 countries combined in military spending with more nuclear warheads than some countries have tanks? How is a country like this going to be defeated? And my conclusion is, it's most likely going to be from within.
This change must come. And in the form that it must come is that this empire, the American empire that's been hurting our people since the beginning, the imperial Western powers that have been hurting our people since the beginning, they must fall. And inshallah, they will fall.
To conquer these two civilizations. You're going to be in charge of this land. That Islamic civilization is going to be supreme.
Time will come that you will destroy the two biggest superpowers. We need to organize. We need to come together. We need to be united.
We know what America plans. يمكرون ويمكر الله. Allah says they plan and we plan.
Need to know the United States as an economy, as a superpower, is falling down.
So there's very much a radical side of this as well, calling for the fall of America, and even more so with people like this Islamic scholar who is actually talking about the how they take over.
We never allow the disbelievers to have any authority over the believers. Impossible. That's not something that belongs to them. So if they have authority in their hands, we will take it from them. How? Simple, brother. We conquer America, we conquer Britain, we conquer Belgium, we conquer the West, and we take this technology for ourselves. Simple. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said to the Jews of Khaybar, he said, I did not come here to grow your crops for you. I came to harvest them. Mean what? You grow my crops. You build my internets. You build my planes and my rockets. I'll come and take it from you. That's called the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ummah of Izzah. The Ummah of Izzah. The Ummah of Jihad. The Ummah of victory. The Ummah of.
So very clearly, Jeff, you want to react to those last couple of videos where we're seeing a little bit more of the what we would call radicalized, hostile takeover minded in this, and understand also before you speak is like one thing that we have to understand is this religion has billions, and I know some people have said even if 10% is radical, it's a massive amount of people, so it's always something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I turn the floor over to you.
Well, this is not new. They tried to conquer Europe militarily during the Middle Ages, and they got as far as Vienna. They did take over Spain and Portugal.
Yep.
And then they got stopped by, I think it was Charlemagne at Tours. So they stopped. They didn't get into France. So they were repulsed by Christendom, for lack of a more accurate descriptor. And so when they realized, and then the Ottoman Empire sat there for a couple, 300 years. And then, like the guy said, all empires fall, and it fell. It fell as a result.
Shortly after World War One.
Yeah, after World War One. It was kind of the joke about the Austrian Empire in Germany. Germany says it's like trying to fight with shackled to a corpse. Well, the Ottoman Empire wasn't any better. It was another corpse. So, and it got broken up after the war, and that's where Saudi Arabia became Saudi Arabia, Transjordan became Jordan. Iraq was carved out. Most of the modern Arab nations that we think of were basically defined in the aftermath of World War One. So what they're trying to do, and they don't have the empire to attack the West like they did when Suleiman the Magnificent was in charge and things like that, and Mehmet and all that. So what they're doing now, because they are not unified militarily, they are unified under religion. And so they're trying to do it again, but not militarily, but by creeping in and then doing it from the inside, eating away almost like a cancer from the inside, as opposed to attacking from the outside. And the West is dumb enough to not recognize it for what it is. And they're like, well, they're not shooting us. Well, not yet, but give them time.
Well, it's somebody laid out that I think it was maybe Raymond Ibrahim. If you guys, anybody wants some really good information on the history of basically both Catholic, Orthodox, Christian, and Islam, he used to work at the Library of Congress, a brilliant man, and I've watched so many of his videos over the last several months. Really brilliant. But he laid it out as the 3 stages. The first stage is they're kind of picking at you from the outside, and then once they get in, so that would be like the terrorist attacks and stuff like that. They come from the outside, and then once they get in, then they're peaceful until they get to a certain level of power. What we're seeing in the UK is that struggle when they're starting to gain the level of power where they actually have a significant ability to wield it. But once they grab absolute power, it seems like what happens is the radical wings end up winning out from within Islam, and they flip that over into total power, and that's when it goes fast.
Well, and that's every revolution that does that. If you look at, ours did not. Ours was the one that did not. If you look at the French Revolution, they overthrow the monarchy, they overthrow the elites, the royals, but they didn't execute the king for a couple of years, because the more moderate people were then replaced by the radicals, the Robespierres, the Jean-Paul Marats, and those people. And that's when the guillotines came out. And the only thing that saved France was that after they got done guillotining all the royals that they could get their hands on, they started guillotining each other. And they basically ran out of heads to lop off. There was actually a political cartoon of the day where it shows this forest of guillotines, and the last guy is in the guillotine pulling the lever to cut off his own head. And it was, I think the joke was, the last man in Paris. And it happened in the Russian Revolution as well. I mean, when they overthrew the Tsar, they didn't kill the Tsar right away. The Tsar and his family were imprisoned in Yekaterinburg out in Siberia. But the people who took over initially were more pro-Western, kind of a Western liberal democracy like we think of it. But that lasted about 1.5 years, and they were overthrown by the Bolsheviks. And then the guys who did that were in turn overthrown by Lenin's people and Stalin. And they, Stalin, between Lenin and Stalin, the first 10 years of the Soviet regime, they were basically killing off anybody who was socialist but not socialist enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is what you're seeing with the Islam: is you get normal people, they get in there, they have kids, their population grows, but then when they get in charge, the radicals take power. And the radicals you're looking at in Islam, you've got in the Sunnis, you've got the Wahhabis, which is Saudi Arabia's brand of Islam, and they're very conservative, the ones that cut your hand off if you're caught stealing, and this stuff. The Muslims you want in your neighborhood, if you have Muslims in your neighborhood, are Sufis. Very mellow people. They tend to be nonviolent. They want to get along. But when a war comes, they don't last, because they don't fight like the Sunnis do, or even the Shias, which is Iran, the Iranian branch.
Well, it's funny you segued into that. That was almost a perfect segue. Let me get this actually.
You see, we think
exactly. Where am I at here? Hold up. I'm having all kinds of technical issues here, and hold up. See if I can.
But you look at Iran. Iran was always a Shia country, but the Shah was in charge. He was more secular. And the minute they got rid of the Shah, for one brief moment, they had Shapur Bakhtiar as their prime minister, who was more of a Western liberal. He lasted 1 year, and then the imams took over. The Ayatollah, and just had
this is exactly what, and this is another good point, because you were just talking about revolution, so you really set this up perfectly. This is. I don't know how to say his last name. Reza Pahlavi.
Reza Pahlavi. That's the Shah. Well, the Shah's family. Lobbies.
Yeah. So let's watch this video because he's talking about specifically. There's two things he's talking about that I want to cover here, and one of them is the speed with which the Iranian takeover was, and the unholy alliance of the red and the black. So he'll explain that.
Western civilization, and the United States in particular, is at risk. I say this because this is exactly what happened to my country 45 years ago.
Yeah.
Iran, you might say, was the testing grounds for what my late father called the unholy alliance of the red and the black, radical Marxism and radical Islamism. These two ideologies converged not to create, but to destroy. Indeed, to destroy the very notion of Iran. As the Ayatollah Khomeini himself, upon his return to Iran, said, "Patriots are of no use to us. We need Muslims. Islam is opposed to nationalism, because nationalism means we want the nation, nationhood, and not Islam." He quickly put his ideology into action. Our National Consultative Assembly became the Islamic Consultative Assembly. Our conventional national army was shunned in favor of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The lion and sun symbol, which adorned our national flag for centuries, was replaced with Allahu Akbar. This united front of Marxists and Islamists took hold of my homeland, but was never satisfied with just taking over Iran, as these two ideologies do not believe in the concept, much less the border of a nation. Indeed, the Islamic Republic in Iran does not view itself as defending or limited to the borders of the Millat, or the Iranian nation, but rather the Ummat, or the Islamic Brotherhood. This expansion has gone far beyond the Middle East. Every day, we see graphic, distressing images of the consequences this regime's expansion has brought all the way to Europe and the West. From looting universities that were once the envy of the world, to supporting terrorist cells taking hold in Europe, to attempting to annihilate Israel, to expanding its criminal footprint to Latin America. This is not an accident. This is the Islamic Republic's political strategy.
Yeah, that was the Shah's son.
Yep. So directly related to, so for those of you, quick history lesson, Iran is what in the ancient times was Persia. That was the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great. That's actually straight out of the Bible.
Yeah.
Cyrus was mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, when he conquered Babylon, which is, I think, Iraq, in the modern age. So in the Euphrates River and all of that stuff. So this guy is directly connected to who was in power when the Ayatollahs and the revolution happened, which turned Iran into an Islamic dominated country, a theocracy, away from the what it was in the 1970s. You go into the 1970s and you look at pictures and videos of Iran, it looks like America.
Yeah,
like it's very westernized. They had a lot of industry, they had a lot of all of this stuff, and within a decade, it was basically looked like every other Islamic country in the Middle East. So that was definitely a downfall of an ancient empire. So, what are your thoughts on the unholy alliance? Because I'm definitely seeing this picture emerge in the United States of the red and the black alliance of this communist Marxist ideology, really kind of aligning itself with these radical Islamists and groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, and all of this stuff. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's an important point to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I mean, they're both looking at each other as an ends to a mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing.
Yep.
But what the socialists and the communists don't understand is that the the extremists, Islamists, don't want a partner.
No.
They will use you to take power and then they'll destroy you.
Yeah.
Just like the Ayatollah did not overthrow the Shah. The people overthrew the Shah. And they had a democratic elected government after that. And then the Ayatollah took over that government. And then the people he executed were the same ones who overthrew the Shah. Shapur Bakhtiar was a hero to the Iranian people. I mean, he was their first prime minister. Well, the Islamists assassinated him. I think he was killed in Paris on a car bomb or something. So they're just going to use the far left, the communists, the socialists, to help them come to power. And when they do, because socialism by its own nature, by its own definition, is godless. It's an atheistic form of government. And the godless are even less human to them than Jews and Christians, because at least Jews and Christians are, they're all considered children of the book. They're all from the Bible, or, the Old Testament, the Torah, and the Quran all have the same basic beginnings. But atheists, they're basically heretics. So they have no qualms about getting rid of those guys.
Yes.
So in the long run, it's not going to be good for the communists and the socialists.
No, and especially the members of the LGBT community, and they'll be the first ones thrown off of buildings. Spoiler alert, they still do that. They still hang people that are engaged in homosexual activity in these Islamic countries. It's not uncommon at all.
One thing along that line, my wife read an article to me this morning that in Iran, what they're doing is they're pushing for gender transition, where men become women and women become men, because it's easier for them to explain that, okay, you're just a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body, than to accept homosexuality, be it homosexual, lesbian. To them, if they can convert a gay man into a woman, then he's no longer homosexual. He's now a woman, and that's okay. It's just this weird, twisted logic that they will not accept that a homosexual or a lesbian either exists or has a right to exist. It's an abomination to them. And they would rather surgically turn them into the opposite sex than allow them to live as a homosexual.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is pretty.
It's the mental gymnastics you have to go through. Blows me away.
So, and here's another one.
Off a roof.
Right.
Or hang you.
And here is another one. So this is talking about the influence of Qatar. I know if you're on X, you hear the anti-Zionists, or everybody's getting $7,000 from Israel if they say anything that's remotely in favor of Israel, and then everybody else that's demonizing Israel is getting paid by Qatar. But there is a real threat when it comes to the amount of money that's in Qatar. And so this video is very interesting and very very thought-provoking. So we'll watch this real quick, because I do think, and back when I was doing regular episodes on here, we did a series of episodes on some flow of money via USAID into the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE and all of these other organizations that are tied and are not good organizations. The Muslim Brotherhood is one of the most corrupt sponsors of terrorism in the world, and I still don't know why we allow members in this country. But in any case, we'll watch this real quick minute.
The Qatari regime has a bay'ah. A bay'ah in Islam is a spiritual oath to the Muslim Brotherhood. Yosef Qaradawi, who was the spiritual head of the Brotherhood for many years, always preached that the true believer, the true Muslim, is obligated to complete the work of Hitler. This character was welcomed by the British establishment, and he helped to create, he was the founding director of Islamic studies in my alma mater at Oxford University. Welcomed into, the upper echelons of, the British establishment.
Assalamu alaikum. It is with enormous pride to pay tribute to this remarkable center.
So is it any wonder that Middle East studies at Oxford or Islamic studies at Oxford, these very important institutions, are turning out apologists for the Muslim Brotherhood, apologists for Hamas, apologists for the Iranian revolutionary regime at places like Oxford, at Yale, and other centers? We estimate that they're playing with over $1 trillion in assets to invest in Western institutions to influence Western society.
That last point is probably the most chilling. $1 trillion in assets to fund, and this is another parallel of what we were just talking about with the way that they operate, because they understand that institutions in the West are the key to shifting the ideology. Our institutions, and we've talked about for years, probably decades, about how the reason that we're turning so far left and everybody coming out of these universities is because the leftists and the communists infiltrated the universities. And it appears that this is the same playbook that we're seeing from regimes like Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood, that they're wanting to infest our institutions. And that's why I think some people were surprised when the Hamas attack on October 7th and then all of these Palestine protests break out in the United States. We're like, where'd all these guys come from? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's funded directly by the regimes that want to get us in a more friendly mindset. So we welcome them in. And while we're welcoming in some regular Muslim people, we're also welcoming in the radicals as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, because what they're doing is they're almost taking over our institutions of higher education. And you look at, and I parallel it with not Qatar, but with Saudi Arabia. They were building universities in Saudi Arabia hand over fist. They had all this oil money and they wanted an educated population. Great. Except 60% of the people going to Saudi universities, this was back in the 90s, 60% of the people going to Saudi universities were studying theology. 60%. How many imams do you need? So, but they weren't engineers, they weren't doctors, they weren't teachers. They were basically studying to be preachers. Nothing wrong with preachers, but there's a limited number how many you actually need.
Right.
And so now you look at our institutions of higher learning, and while it's not theology, it's in effect socialist theology. It's all this useless stuff, and I stand by that word 100%. When you have gender women's studies, social justice, all these degrees that all you're doing is teaching people how to whine and complain, but they don't actually do anything.
Right.
And the university, and they turn out professors and they turn out teachers, and then the teachers pass the problem along to the lower, to the elementary and high school age. And University of California, San Diego, UCSD, has to put remedial math in for their freshmen because they can't do math at the 7th grade level. They're in college and they can't do 7th grade math. And know who else has the same problem? Harvard. The great College of Harvard, they have to have remedial math. Now, when you go to school for 12 years and you can't do math, but you can get into Harvard, what's wrong with this picture? And it's because we have dumbed down our institutions. Our kids are not learning, and what they are learning is crap. They don't.
Well, they're learning.
They don't know how to do math, but they can teach you all about microaggressions and triggers.
And that's it. Is that we're not actually being schooled in stuff that actually will it'll spur things like critical thinking.
Yeah.
So it'll spur things like creativity. I actually saw a video, I don't have it here, but Myron Golden is actually he's a multimillionaire Christian guy, really awesome dude. and he looks really cool. He's got this amazing white beard. He's a black dude, but he's a really, really awesome guy. And I saw a clip from a podcast of his that he was on, and he was talking about how NASA does this testing for creativity with all of the people that come through in NASA. And they tried to do it on kids. And what they found was that at 5 years old, so typically creativity is like 2 to 3% have a high level of creativity of adults, right? So they said, we're going to test and see if there's some correlation in children. So they go in and they test 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, the same group, 5, 10, and 15. So this was a 15-year study of the same group of kids. When they studied them at 5, like 78% still had high levels of creativity. At 10, 34% had high levels of creativity. By 15, it's down to like 15%.
They beat it out of them.
Well, it correlates with what they're seeing in NASA is that it's 2 to 3%. And he said, well, that's not natural. That's programming. They're programming creativity out of our kids and they're turning them into drones. That's the whole idea of when you go back to when they started the education organizations in this country in the early 1900s, it was, when you look at the mandate, it was to turn out factory workers, people that could just do a thankless job and build things for the wealthy people.
Yeah.
You know, you can get into that really deep, but yeah, and I'm going to agree with Guy here. Homeschool.
Yeah.
Kids.
Well, I was on Twitter or X and went back and forth with a guy and talking about the schools, and he was like, well, it's just the kids. I go, the kids will learn what you teach them. And if I was talking about AI and how kids are cheating using AI and writing papers, so it's not their own thoughts, it's not their own capability. They just punch in a topic and AI squirts out a book report. But I was like, kids will do what they're taught. And if you teach them to be lazy and to cheat, you'll get a bunch of lazy cheats. Because we're not teaching them to work hard. We're not teaching them to think out of the box. We're not teaching them to come up with their own original ideas. Instead, we say, here, go home and do this assignment. And what they do is they just get on the computer, go into Grok or go into Chat GPT, and it spits out an answer. And professors at college said, yeah, none of these kids are writing their own papers.
Right. And it kills creativity. And most of my life, I've been a pretty creative person. I was a musician. I do a lot of stuff with video. I have a creative mind. And that's something that, I see in my children. I want to spur that on because creativity is what brings innovation. It's not just learning this. It's not learning to spit out. And that's one of the biggest problems I have with standardized testing is you're putting all the kids in the same box.
Yeah.
You're not actually teaching critical thinking, which was what school was meant for, was to teach you how to, or teach you what it meant to think, not what to think, how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
And let you figure that stuff out. It's really one of the biggest failures of our country as a whole is that we have turned our education system, just like all these people raving about closing down the Department of Education. The Department of Education has been an abject failure since its inception. Test scores have gone down over the 50-some years that it's been in existence. Not up. It has not had. If you did as bad of a job, you got hired to do a job, and you did as bad as the Department of Education, you should be fired.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
But anyways, back to some of our other stuff and talking about this because we can obviously we here in Survival Dispatch we'll get on rabbit holes, but what is going on is we have this combination of dumbing down our children and not putting them into a place where they can objectively think or even objectively work a job effectively. Because a real quick side story before we continue on, I work in a manufacturing plant for automotive. I'm an engineer there, and we were having workforce issues. And so through some of these hiring agencies, we brought in some people, Venezuelans, and I don't know if they're legal or illegal. I don't know, But I will tell you this: our workforce is stabilized, and most of these people work circles around the Americans, and it's sad. It's really sad because they come to work, they show up, they want to work, and they do the work, and they don't speak real good English, but they work hard. And it's sad that as Americans, we no longer have that pride that we take in the work that we do. And it's another thing we need to be teaching our kids, you know, that hard work, no matter what the job, you should work hard at it. And it's going to be a contributor to the downfall of this country if we're not careful. Moving to this next clip. So this is another, says, America, are you paying attention?
Why am I migrating here? Why am I in America? The Prophet ﷺ's companions left Mecca to go to a land that had no Muslims. We are in this country purely for the sake of Allah.
As we're here living in the US, what is our role now? Let me just quote for you an ayah of the Quran. Allah is saying, do not obey the disbelievers. Don't yield to them. And then He gives us the process of what to do next. وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. And so make jihad against them.
What is your duty as a member of the Ummah now that you are also an American? It is our physical jihad duty to fight the entire earth until we enter it into the Ummah.
It is the world's most dangerous ideology. In the first part of the 20th century,
this is who I was talking about earlier. This is Rabin Ibrahim. He looks quite different now. This is kind of an older video, but an amazing scholar on and a subject matter expert on Islam and the early church, the Crusades, everything. Highly recommend.
The answer was fascism. First manifest in Italy in the 1920s, and then in Nazi Germany and in Imperial Japan. It took a world war and 50 million dead to stamp it out. In the second half of the 20th century, the answer was communism. Between the Soviet Union, Mao's China, and their client states, at least 100 million people were killed in its wake. Today, the answer is Islamism, a radical and often violent form of Islam. Like fascism and communism, Islamism is totalitarian in nature. The state controls everything. Also, like fascism and communism, Islamism is inherently expansionist. It always seeks to get bigger, cross borders, and bring as many peoples as possible under its control. And, like fascism and communism, many of Islamism's adherents are prepared to kill to achieve its aims. Those aims are antithetical to everything Western and other free societies stand for. Free speech, free enterprise, freedom to practice or not to practice any religion, freedom of assembly, a free press, and, of course, fundamental human and civil rights for all their citizens. Anyone who opposes Islamist expansionism is the enemy and must be destroyed. That, of course, includes the United States, all of Europe, and Israel.
Pretty concise and accurate, and he does make the differentiation. Radical Islamism,
yep.
And that's maybe the best way to explain it. Radical Islamism is that you saw in that entire video of people saying, hey, we're here to conquer. We're not here to assimilate. We're not here to enjoy the freedoms of the West. We're here to enslave it over time. Jeff?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And they are different from rank and file Muslims, like Hitler was different from Christian Democrats in Germany in 1936. Yeah, they were both Germans, and they wanted a better Germany, but Hitler wanted a better Germany that basically swallowed up the entire world, and he did it with Europe. And then you had, Japan thought it was their divine right to conquer Asia, and they invaded. They invaded Japan. They invaded Manchuria. They took over the Korean Peninsula, and then swept across most of the Pacific. And the Russians were the same way. They never met a socialist communist party anywhere in the world they didn't like and were willing to support. But what happened with Russia, the reason we didn't come to war with them over that is their economic policies were so bad they couldn't support their aims. They ran out of, again, socialism, you run out of other people's money. They ran out of money and they went broke, and because they didn't have a capitalistic entrepreneurial society that generated wealth. They had a society that consumed it.
Yeah, and That is a really, really good point. And what China did, obviously, we've done a lot on China too.
Yeah.
China was smart in the fact that they kind of westernized their economy.
Yeah.
And so that they could fund what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between Russia and China. Chinese stuff's everywhere. You can't find Russian-made stuff anywhere. So we're not selling Russian-made cars and electronic devices. So yeah, that's the key difference there is Russia's form of was kind of an isolationist form of communism, whereas China was much more expansionist.
Stalin was so paranoid. He really was an isolationist up to the point, the World War II started. He didn't, they were almost like a massive hermit kingdom.
Yeah.
And he wanted to, he was so busy, he's so paranoid about threats from within that he didn't pay attention to threats from without until Hitler.
Yeah. And a side note, if you ever want to watch a kind of a very dark sense of humor comedy, watch The Death of Stalin.
It's hilarious
movie,
but it's so
and it's
Russian.
actually pretty accurate.
Yeah, and it's so Russian, and it's phenomenal actors. It's a great cast. Steve Buscemi, of all people, playing Nikita Khrushchev, and was great.
Yep. I may have to put that on while I'm editing a video later. So anyways, just a little side note. So, and with this is when you start to see things like this is when kind of the alarm bells go off. So this is from Gay Gallops. And it's just a quick video, but it shows they're having these giant demonstrations in these major cities. This is in New York, and I'll show you a couple of these.
So there are over 500 mosques in New York, but they take to the streets and have to pray in public. They're doing this, clearly, I mean, it's just crazy to see, but they're doing this to show their dominance and to show that they're taking over the culture and taking over our land, and they don't care how we feel about it.
And there's another one, I couldn't find it, but the night that...
So there are over 500 mosques.
No, that's playing again. There was a video of... it was very similar to this one. This is the only one I could find quickly. But when Zoran Mamdani won, there was a guy on the street with thousands of Muslims out in the streets, and I believe it was in Times Square, where he basically was saying, "We're not going to stop. We're going to overtake, and we're going to Islam will enter every home in the United States." And I said, "Well, that's actually a threat. That's not a hey, we're here to coexist with you. That's a we're here to push our ideology on you." And that's a scary thing. Like, that's not something that's, our country does not align with that, because we were built off more of the Christian principles of the Constitution, not the principles of Sharia. So those two don't work well together. So
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه بسم.
So these are just displays that of where they want to show, hey, we are here. We are growing, and we're a force to be reckoned with.
Well,
it's another quick. Yeah, go ahead.
The Islamic version of the Nazi brown shirts of the SA running around with the little torch parades in Germany.
Yeah,
where they
I didn't even think about that.
And they'd all be holding these torches, and there'd be thousands of them, and it was to intimidate people.
Yeah,
that's all it was for.
Because generally people are much more most everyday people. I wouldn't put myself in this category necessarily, because I'm a little bit more outspoken, but most everyday people are not going to go do a demonstration that makes them uncomfortable to be in those kinds of situations. So if you want to show dominance, and most people, they're non-confrontational. They're not going to stand up and say, nope, we're not no, we don't want this here. They're just kind of going to walk away, bow their head, and walk away and get away from it. So this is a sign. This is a it's what you were saying. That's a perfect parallel to draw between that and the brown shirts, because it's the kind of stuff that we saw in late 1930s Germany, where they were constantly having these parades of the brown shirts. So very, very good and astute parallel to draw. This quick 13-second video, but this is some radicals, they believe this.
We're commanded to terrorize the disbelievers. And this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers?
The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, Torhibuna. This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah. We're commanded.
And this next video is an imam in UK talking about the jizya. If you don't know what jizya is, if you've ever heard of a tax for non-Muslims, that's what they call jizya. It is a tax, and he actually explains the way this is implemented. This was implemented heavily in Egypt. Egypt used to be a very heavily Coptic Christian country back before the Muslim Brotherhood took over, and before that all went down. A century ago, it was a primarily Christian country, and that has dwindled down to where it's less than 10%. And they did it through things like jizya, which is basically a tax that you pay if you're a non-believer, a infidel, in order to, well, I'll just let him explain it here, and then we'll talk about it.
We start saying like this, like that. There's no need. And just to clarify as well, yes, jizya is taken from the non-Muslims. We take the jizya from the non-Muslims, the combatants, the enemies of Allah and His Rasul, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in exchange. And when we say like tax, it's not like a council tax or road tax that you're paying. You understand? And I'll get to that point as well. Is we're taking in exchange for your blood, for your life. Do you understand? We're taking it in exchange for your blood, for your life. This is mentioned by the commentators of the Quran as well. The Mufassirin, they've explained, the Fuqaha have gone into detail. And why are we taking this is because you are a rebellion. You are rebellious against Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And because we have mercy, Islam has mercy, we start saying
mercy. So we're not going to kill you if you pay us.
Yeah.
That's almost like mob tactics, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, it's very much like mob. Yeah, and nice life you have there. Hope.
Yeah,
you got
something happened to it.
Yeah, yeah, it is. They taxed the Jews and they taxed the Christians. They did it throughout what is now Israel. Before it was Israel, they did it in Egypt. They did it in Saudi Arabia, and for the longest time, it was basically forced those people out of the country. They couldn't afford to stay there. Even though they'd been there for centuries. And that's why you don't have a whole lot of Christians left in Iraq either.
Yep.
They drive them out. And I have a friend who is, he's Iranian, but he's Presbyterian. And his father was like—
That's actually very common. That's actually very common.
Well, his dad was the number 2 guy in the Presbyterian church in Iran when the Ayatollah took over. And they went to the number 1 guy and said, sign over all the church properties, give us the keys to all the churches, and get the hell out of here. And the guy goes, I'm not going to do that. And they shot him dead. Then they went to my friend's dad, and who is now, hey, guess what? You got promoted. You're number 1 now because we just killed the old number 1. And he had to sign over the deeds to all the church property in Iran and hand him the keys. And his son was in the U.S. at the time. And it was like, Dad, do you want me to come home? And he's like, hell no, stay out. Yeah. We're trying to get out. If you come home, that's just one more we have to pay to get out of the country.
Yep, 100%. So with all of this that we've showed you tonight, we're kind of going to start wrapping up. I've got a couple of newsworthy things to report out on. But there is clearly, something for us to be aware of here. It is something for us to not take lightly and not ignore, but rather to be aware of and to, sound the alarm that we don't want our country taken over. We don't want our country taken over. And if there are people moving in here for the sole purpose of outbreeding us and taking over our country and turning it into an Islamic controlled country, that's not going to jide with our way of life. We're already a much more secularized country than we were at the founding, and that has caused issues as well with the way that, like, kind of socially, that our country operates. But this would be a radical change, a drastic radical change away from the way that our country is meant to run, on the Christian principles that it was founded on, and the freedom and liberty that we have. Because the way that these Islamic countries are run is not with liberty and freedom in mind. It's much more in the vein of, hey, you're going to do what we say, or you're going to pay the price for it. So, Jeff, you got anything to add there before we move on?
No, I think we've covered this.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to share this. This was actually in the Guardians chat. And real quick, side note for you guys, if you guys are interested in some really awesome prep food, got some right back here to grab. Always have it on hand. Carnivalt. This stuff is awesome. I have been through like 6 bags of this stuff. No joke. It's that good. Just a little bit of water, and you let it set, let it rehydrate, and then you cook it as if you were cooking meat you bought in the store. Really, really awesome. They make a great product. I would highly recommend it. And if you guys go over to carnivalt.com and use the code EATMEAT, get 10% off. It's high value, and it's a great thing to add to your prep, because this bag is good for like 20 years or something crazy like that. So highly recommend Carnivalt. And also, this was kind of broken in part of the discussions we were having last night on the Guardians channel. I'm going to throw this up. This is from Sarah Adams. We all know Sarah Adams. And this is the terrorist exploiting modified fentanyl, what officers and K9 teams need to know. Terrorist organizations, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, are now using modified fentanyl to condition operatives for aggression, endurance, and external operations. This enhanced compound moves through the same traffic routes U.S. officers encounter daily. So you're thinking of the way that drugs flow through the country, they're using the same routes. So do not assume that the drug user is harmless. What officers need to know, and honestly, we all need to know. Terrorists exploiting this enhanced synthetic opioid can to create fighters who can push through pain, fear, and hesitation. This modified fentanyl can suppress pain, increase aggression, reduce fear and hesitation, boost stamina, impair speech or communication, mask pre-attack indicators. Subjects under these compounds may present as extremely aggressive, fast, reactive, physically volatile, nonverbal or incoherent, unresponsive to commands, ineffective to pain, unaffected by pain, focus, mission-driven, and resistant. So I'm not going to read the rest of this, but you can go over to Sarah Adams' X account, read the rest of that. Something we need to all be aware of, because it seems like those that are bent on these attacks that we have been forecasting and alarming you guys about over the last year, or couple of years, they're going to employ everything that they possibly can, and this would be one of those things. So think of like a berserker, 28 days later kind of thing, where they're basically just these zombies that are bent on just destruction and stuff like that. So something to be aware of. Do you have anything, you know anything about this modified fentanyl, Jeff, or have any information on it?
Specifically, no, but I know during the October 7th attack against Israel, a lot of those guys were high as a kite.
Mm-hmm.
They had basically no fear. I don't know if it was this modified fentanyl or if it was something with amphetamines. The Yemenis and these Somalis did it with khat, which is a plant you could chew, and it was a mild narcotic. And in South America, for the longest times, if they would chew coca leaves for the same thing, they could go further, and it's basically cocaine, but it was the organic version of it. and they could march longer and, fight harder. And to be honest, we did it with some of our flyers in World War II. For these really long missions where they didn't have relief, they were basically getting methamphetamines. So they could stay awake for the mission, and then they'd come back and crash hard for 3 days.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, you can go back to World War II, the Blitzkrieg. Hitler was using meth and early methamphetamines for that stuff. So we are. This is not something that's new. It's been employed in multiple wars because
if coffee works, let's get something 100 times stronger.
Right, exactly. Hey, Doherty, I saw your comment in the chat. Yes, I have lost about 35 pounds in the last 2.5 months.
Rub it in.
Just cleaning up my diet, making sure that I am putting the right fuel in my body. I got to a point where I was really run down, and that was kind of around the time that I took a sabbatical away from Survival Dispatch, and I was just tired and run down. And I said, I got to get this in order, and made some changes in my life. And I tell you what, I feel better than I have in over a decade. So it's been a long journey, but I would highly recommend all of us kind of lose some of that extra weight that all of us Americans seem to carry because we eat cheeseburgers and French fries and Oreos and all the stuff that's coming up in the next 2 months with holidays.
I resemble that.
And I still got a little ways to go. I'd like to get down about 10 more pounds, but it's been a long journey. But thank you for noticing. That's good to hear that at least some people are noticing. So anyways, as we close this out really quickly before we get to our closing thoughts, I want to give you guys another urge to go over and join our guardians in our paid membership over on Substack. It's a huge thing for you guys to do. It's really a great value, especially with the discounted price that we're running right now, $7.99 a month or $74.99 for the year, which gives you about 2.5 months for free off of the annual. With that, you get the private signal chats channels. We have 5 of them, and maybe adding some more soon, hopefully. But they cover all the wide gamut. We just started a threat wire one. So if you guys have been seeing our threat wires pop up on all our social medias, with yours truly as the host of that, this is one of the channels we do. So we share intel in our local areas. And they're really just awesome people in there, very like-minded people. So if you haven't done that, go over there and hit that subscribe button on the paid memberships. It helps you guys, and it also gives us a way to continue to bring this content to you. It also gives you direct access to us as a team behind the paywall, so you can message us. Early access to content, full sit reps for all of the shows that come out on a daily basis. You get those 37 survival e-mags and the emergency alerts. So big deal, and it's a very good value. So go over to survivaldispatch.news and sign up. We appreciate you guys doing that. All right, as we wrap up, I think it's important for us to say that we need to be aware of these threats. We need to be aware of all of the things going on in our country. We can't put our head in the sand because it's a critical time for us as a nation. I think we're still kind of teetering on the edge of a knife, and it could go either way. But we're aware of the terrorist threats, but we also need to be aware of the slow-growing threats, not just the ones that are kinetic, but the ones that can grow over time. And it's like letting a baby boa constrictor into your house, and it's not a threat until it gets to be about 10 feet long, and it grows to where it can crawl into bed with you and kill you overnight. So this is something that we all need to be aware of. Don't let the snake in the house. And urge, one of the ways that we can do this is we can draw attention in our local elections. The local level is where they typically start to infiltrate first with the radicals. School boards with and city councils, all of those kind of things. This is what they did in Michigan. and now I think there's 40 plus members that are Muslim in Congress. So this is something that we need to be aware of, and we need to be standing up and sounding the alarm for. So be aware and be engaged in this stuff, and follow. If you're on X, follow Survival Dispatch, follow Command 11 Khalid, follow Sarah Adams, and there's a bunch of others that you'll see pop up and repost. You follow Righteous Savages because we're doing the threat wire stuff. And we're sounding the alarm to whoever can hear. And really, we need the churches to be sounding the alarms too, as well, because this can grow into a massive threat to our way of life and Western civilization. And I think that's the goal. So we have to be aware. Jeff, I'm going to let you throw some other things or whatever your thoughts are, and then we'll do the conflicted question.
Well, I think people just need to be aware that this is going on, and not every Muslim is an Islamist, and you've got to be on the lookout for the Islamists, because those are the ones that are the problem. They're the ones that want to basically destroy our way of life. They want to force you to believe like them, to live like them. And if you don't want to, and I certainly don't want to, you better stand up and fight that crap immediately.
Yep. Fight it. It's kind of the whole thing. Fight it with the ballot box before you have to fight it with the bullets.
Yep.
That's your two options. So, and I don't want to necessarily, and I mean, more importantly, just an add on to this, I don't want my kids to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because, I'm 43 years old, in another 20, 30 years, I may see where this stuff has really grown into something. My kids may have to fight these wars. I don't want my kids to have to fight these wars, to fight these battles. So let's get involved now. Let's be involved. And I know our audience is very much aware of all of this stuff, but share it with the people around you that will listen. So, guys, it's been awesome to host again and to get to see some familiar faces in the chat. Sorry I didn't get to say hey to everybody, but Dano, also seeing you is awesome. Really, really appreciate it. And who knows? Maybe I'll be back on. Hopefully I'll be back on sooner than later. So, but for all of you guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Go over to the Substack, sign up for The Guardian. Go over to Carnivalt, get your meat, and use that Eat Meat code. Do all of those things because it helps us grow, and it's going to help you guys out as well. But until tomorrow, which I believe Khalid is hosting tomorrow, but until tomorrow, be safe, be prepared, stay aware, and God bless America.
Judging